Hello, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Vita Activa, a new YouTube channel. This is my first real kick at transmitting important information via YouTube or via anything other than writing blogs and papers. There will be errors. I'm presenting this information because I feel my privileged glimpse into philosophical psychology, addiction, trauma, the arts, and delivering psychotherapy may generate useful insights. Let's hope so. My goal with this channel is to be clear, concise, and informative. If you find that not to be the case, please write me a note and let me know. I want us to celebrate some canonic thought, and I want us to challenge some current thought. My overarching premise is that those of us fortunate enough to be alive through the 20th and 21st centuries have seen extraordinary advancements in technology, science, and medicine, while the quality of our social lives has degraded at exactly the same time. The similarities are the identification of truths in both science and social conditions are based on ideas. That's common to both. The difference is that science and social conditions are based on different epistemic standards. Epistemic is a 25-cent word, meaning concerned with another 25-cent word, epistemology, which is one of the 5 divisions of philosophy. Epistemology studies how and what we know. So what I'm saying here is that the way that the arts, since probably the 1970s, have viewed their data is different from the way science views its data. Science is empirical, evidence-based, rational, ultimately data justified. The arts are dogma-based opinions about subjective points of view. In other words, sometime in the last quarter of the 20th century, the arts changed. Instead of making the text, the score, the film, the painting, or the built form the primary source of data, scholarship became about subjective social positions, i.e., your individual experience became the data. Based on that summary, I'm worried. I'm worried about the direction in which the Western world is moving. By the West, I mean Western Europe, North America, Australia, and New Zealand. The name, the West, comes from Western Europe, which originated in Greece and Rome. The ideas and traditions of Greece and Rome, which spread throughout Western Europe, were carried by waves of immigrants to North America and Australasia. Today, those same ideas are being beaten into an unjustly shamed submission by university-based and religion-based dogmas, telling us all white Westerners are privileged, overbearing racists seeking to colonize everyone we encounter. Maybe, instead of choosing to see Westerners as privileged, overbearing racists and power-lusting colonists, we might look at some other interpretations of the character and nature of Westerners based on historical fact. For a few examples, the freest, most tolerant countries in the world are Western democracies. The most advanced medicine in the world is practiced in Western countries. The wealthiest societies exist in Western countries. Most of the best research universities still exist, barely, in Western countries. The fairest, most objective judicial systems have traditionally existed in Western countries. And finally, the most effective military forces are those within Western countries. Unless you are an indigenous North American or Australasian, you are an immigrant or the descendant of immigrants. We immigrants, millions of us, moved from Asia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa to reach the West. Why? The reasons most often cited include a desire to escape oppressive totalitarian governments or oppressive totalitarian religions, and to live and raise children in freer societies where opportunities are more easily reached. Although I know those opportunities were more readily accessible in my 20s than for my children, those opportunities are still available. So I like the West. Big deal, you say. Why should you care? You should care, especially if you're young, because if I'm right, there are a lot of very smart people who have already been saying these things long before me. We are at a turning point. As I see it, either we learn our history, defend the values that created that history, and improve the human condition, or, and this is heavy, we let dogmatists lead us into a new dark age. Believe me, I don't want to dwell on dark ages. My preference is to focus on eudaimonia rather than entropy. Let me define those terms. Eudaimonia comes from two Greek words, eu, you, and daemon, well-spirited, literally. So I want to dwell on well-spiritedness. How do human beings flourish? What are the conditions that allow us to flourish? Entropy is chaos, which is fostered by disorganization, misinformation, and bad epistemology. In other words, let's look forward positively and proactively. Let's do something. Let's live rationally active lives. And that's where my title comes from, Vita Activa, or living actively. In psychotherapy, we talk about interventions. Interventions are tools, techniques, questions, tests, suggestions for clients to work on. Generally, the idea is to help regulate emotions, think clearly, or uncover values. Here's this week's intervention. Monitor how many times you act based on evidence-based thinking versus acting based on how you're feeling. And this brings us full circle. Evidence-based thinking is behind every technical, medical, or scientific discovery made since before the Copernican Revolution. Christian dogma was the force trying to prevent, obscure, and coerce the Copernican revolution into dogmatic submission. Today, Dark Agers are university and government-based wokists or radical Islamists, or both. The goals remain the same. On that side, enslave, control, and restrict, versus for evidence-based thinkers, freedom of thought, speech, and markets. Maybe you noticed how tolerant Canadian universities were of Palestinian protesters since October 7th, the day Hamas murdered, raped, killed, maimed, and or kidnapped about 1,200 people attending an open-air concert in a free country, the only country in the Middle East founded on Western values. That's not a coincidence. In fact, it's a coming attraction, unless we bolster our own cultural defenses. I'll read the summary below before ending. I'll be back next Saturday afternoon. Thanks for watching. Be well. Premise 1. Through the latter 20th and early 21st centuries, science, technology, and medicine have advanced, driven by evidence-based thinking. Premise 2. The human condition has worsened socially, economically, experientially, driven by opinion-based dogmas. Premise 3. The West has fostered, paid for, and brought into fruition freedom, democracy, medicine, wealth, research, justice, and self-defense systems never before reached by humanity. Premise 4. If we stand by thinking about things, vita contemplativa, the West may perish. If we become active in defense of the West, vita activa, we may flourish once again. Question 1 for this first video: are you using evidence-based thinking or feelings to guide